Hey, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm going to be explaining ETFs. ETFs explained. That's what we're going to be talking about in this video, as well as ETF investing and ETF investing for beginners. That's really what I want to cover because I know there's a tremendous amount of interest out there in ETFs. I'm going to explain to you what they are, give you a definition, and then I'm going to cover quite a few different topics around ETFs. Are they a good investment? Are they better than stocks? Are they better than mutual funds? Is there a lot of risk associated with ETFs? All of those things we're going to dissect, we're going to get into in this video. If you're brand new here, please consider subscribing to the channel because every single day I bring you brand new videos about how to invest your money, what type of investment vehicles to put your money into, 401k, mutual fund, ETFs, individual stocks, as well as I'll be bringing you videos all around personal finance, how to just simply do more with your money. That is my objective. That's what I'm here for, is to help you do more with your money and make more with your money, okay? My name's Austin, by the way, if you haven't ever seen me, and I'm here for you. Lastly, if you do me a huge favor, please drop a like on this video. It really helps my channel out. So let's get into this. Let's talk about what are ETFs. First thing I want to get into is the definition of an ETF and what they are, okay? So ETF, what that stands for is Exchange Traded Fund. By the way, I've got a few notes here. If you see me looking down, that's what I'm doing. So an ETF is also known as an Exchange Traded Fund. An exchange traded fund, or an ETF, I'm going to call it an ETF from here on out because I'm not going to be saying exchange traded fund a bunch, is basically, think of it this way. An ETF is a basket of securities. So it's a fund made up of different securities or different stocks inside of the fund, okay? And the ETF is traded on an exchange just like a stock. ETFs are traded daily, so you can get into an ETF and get out of an ETF on the same day if you so chose. I wouldn't recommend that, but they are traded daily. The difference between an ETF versus a mutual fund is, remember, I mentioned an ETF is bought and sold daily. It's traded daily. It goes up, it goes down. It fluctuates during the day, okay? Whereas a mutual fund is only traded once a day, usually and it's after the market closes, okay? So that is the definition of an ETF. An ETF is simply a group of stocks that you can buy into. So you can buy into the ETF fund and you can then own, have a little piece of all those different stocks that are in the ETF fund. There are so many different types of ETF investments that it would take me hours to go over different types. What I love about ETFs is that they're a great way to invest in different types of stocks, to minimize risk, to maybe not be invested in individual stocks, right? And kind of looking at ETFs versus mutual funds. Mutual funds, usually you tend to have a higher, usually about $1,000 minimum just to get into a mutual fund. There's different mutual funds with lower cost of entries. But what I love about ETFs is you can get into a lot of ETFs for really, really cheap. And there's different, prices for ETFs, but usually about $100 for an ETF share, which is not bad for brand new investors, okay, and for existing investors. I hold ETF funds in addition to mutual funds, in addition to 401k, and I have individual stocks. What I love about ETFs is that they are a great vehicle for passive investors, so that you can kind of, if you're a passive investor, meaning you just kind of want to buy in and be involved in different types of stocks and not trade and, not be actually trading individual stocks, ETFs are a great way to do that, okay? So let's get into some of the things around ETFs. So that's an explanation, kind of differences of ETFs. Let's get into, are ETFs a good investment? Is there risk associated with them? Let's get into those, okay? So ETFs have become incredibly popular for both active and passive investors. I mentioned that an active investor is somebody who usually is actively buying and selling on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, right? And ETFs are good for that. They're good for active investors. There are people I know that trade ETFs daily, weekly, etc. But they're also really, really good for passive investors who just want to buy, hold, and kind of hold for the long term. I tend to look at ETFs as a longer term investment. That's how I look at them. So for me, longer term is 2+ years, really 5+ years. And that's how I look at them, okay? So let me see. Are they good for, I've got some notes here, right? This is what you see me looking at. Are ETFs good for beginners? I think that the ETFs are ideal for beginners because they have a tremendous amount of benefits. They're usually, they help you to minimize your risk so that, you don't have to be buying individual stocks and have the risk of, if that one individual stock goes down, you can buy ETFs for different types of sectors of the market. You can buy blue chip ETFs. You can buy ETFs that are based off of foreign company stocks. You can buy ETFs that are based off of around real estate trusts. You can buy ETFs that are based off of, they follow the S&P 500. You can buy an ETF for darn near any type of mix or basket of different stocks. It's easy to do, okay? ETFs are really great at helping you diversify a portfolio. So what I mean by that is, let's say you're really, really heavy in individual stock investments. And I think that ETFs are a good way to kind of hedge your bet or minimize or diversify your overall, your overall portfolio of your stocks, right? I think that that's a really good thing to look at. ETFs usually have a very low investment threshold. Doesn't cost you a lot per share of an ETF. You can buy different ETFs, just one share of that one share of that one. So they're all really, really good, okay? So let's talk about, hey, Austin, are there downsides to ETFs? Well, the answer is sure. I mean, ETFs are subject to market fluctuation just like any other investment, vehicle out there, right? So if the market goes down, ETFs are most likely going to go down as well. If the market goes up, they're probably going to follow that. By the way, you can buy an ETF that's like I think of it as a contra ETF. It's basically, you can buy ETFs that are set up to go against basically the market. So like an ETF that's set up to, when the market's going down, that ETF is going to do well. You can buy that type of ETF, okay? By the way, I didn't mention this earlier, but there's a disclaimer in the description below. Hey, I'm only here for entertainment purposes. I'm not a professional stockbroker. So yeah, consider, make a good investment choice when you're looking at investing. Just want to say that up front for disclaimer. There you go. And that's also in the description below. So sure, there's downside in ETFs, but I think overall, I think that ETFs help you minimize risk, just like a mutual fund. But again, remember, ETFs differ versus mutual funds. ETFs, remember, usually lower strike point to get in, buy in, versus mutual funds. And remember, mutual funds are only bought and sold once, basically after the market closes on that given day. Whereas ETFs are sold and bought and sold. You can get in and out of ETFs a lot easier, faster, things like that. Okay. I get this question all the time. Hey, Austin, are ETFs safer than stocks? And the short answer is maybe, okay? Because it depends on what type of stocks you're buying. Depends on if you're a type of investor who's really, hey, you're out there buying blue chip, long-term investment stocks like the Amazons of the world, Teslas, things like that. Or if you're out there who you're out there buying penny stocks, as an example. Nothing wrong with either. There's investors that do really, really well in both of those respective examples. But ETFs are a good way to minimize risk. You're going to hear me talk a lot about that. They're a good way to be bought into and to basically what an ETF, think about it this way, versus buying individual shares of stocks, you could buy into a ETF fund that has maybe those stocks in it, but it's also got 5, 10, or however many other stocks in it, right? So that basically, minimizes your risk if one of those stocks does really, really badly right now for a period of time or things like that, because your overall risk, because your stock, you're invested in the ETF, which is made up of these 10 stocks, you're spreading your risk across those 10 stocks. So I think that ETFs are inherently safer than stocks, but again, should you be investing in individual stocks? Sure, if you so chose. I have individual stocks, just like I have a 401k, mutual fund, ETFs, things like that. I consider ETFs part of my overall portfolio, okay? So that's how I look at it. All right, so we just talked about, are they safe? Okay, so let's continue. I guess, again, I got some notes here. I want to make sure I cover everything for you. Remember, this video is really around explaining ETFs and helping kind of in beginning investors, and maybe even those of you guys have been around the block a little bit. But how do beginners, or how do you get started investing in ETFs? It's really simple. You need a brokerage account, right? So you need a brokerage account, whomever you want to work with. I'm not here to pitch you on any brokerage account. Not going to make any dollars off of that. Use whomever you want to. Banks these days have them. Bank of America is associated with Merrill Lynch. Wells Fargo has brokerage accounts. You can go get an individual brokerage account at Webull, Robinhood, Ameritrade, any of those guys. As long as you just go get a brokerage account, and I'd be looking at one that's the lowest cost and things like that, lowest cost per trades and things like that. But you need a brokerage account to do that. And then really after you get the brokerage account, pay attention to guys like me and other guys on YouTube, and maybe do some of your own research and your own due diligence, and look at choosing ETFs that fit your investment objectives, right? So there's different types of ETFs. I've talked a lot about different types. If you're a real conservative investor, you may want to go after ETFs that that track the S&P 500, because then they're pretty much guaranteed to do 8 to 12%, per year, because they follow the S&P 500. And I have videos, guys, coming where I'm going to be recommending a few specific ETFs, and that's coming in the near future. I'll drop a link to them below whenever I actually make that video. That video's coming in a couple of days. But there's different types of ETFs, okay? So how do you get started? Get a brokerage account, decide kind of like what type of ETFs you want to invest in, and then start investing. And then I would recommend investing in ETFs in more of the longer term, okay? So don't look at ETFs like, hey, I'm going to buy and sell them every single day. If that's you, that's cool. But I tend to think of ETFs as kind of like something I'm going to be in for the long haul. Okay. So there you go. All right. So here's another one I get asked this question all the time. Do ETFs pay dividends? Absolutely. Okay. If the ETF that you're in has stocks in it, that those stocks pay dividends, then you will receive the dividend. Okay. Usually the dividend is it comes in from the company, it's held in the fund, and then distributed quarterly. That's usually how it works. Some funds work a little differently, but that's really what it is. And then it's up to you if you want to reallocate those dividends back into the fund, things like that. Okay, that's really it. I mean, but there are ETF funds that are out there that are specifically made up of stocks that pay dividends. Again, you name it, there's an ETF fund that's out there. Okay. Should I buy stock or an ETF? I get this question all the time. And really what I want to say to you is that I recommend both, okay? Again, if you're a good investor, you have started at your 401k, did a video yesterday talking about kind of stock market investing for beginners. It's going to be listed down below in the description, by the way. I think you start with your 401k because, guys, 401k, you're investing those in your 401k with pre-tax dollars, okay? So before the IRS takes their cut, you're investing in your 401k with pre-tax dollars. We max out our 401k all the time. That's what we do, okay? Then I would recommend some mutual funds if you have the money to be able to get into mutual funds. But that's really one of the cool things about ETFs is that if, let's say, you didn't have $1,000 or more to go put into a mutual fund right now, then you could start with ETFs, okay? So I think that then you look at ETFs, and then lastly, you look at individual stocks, okay? And then when you're looking at individual stocks, you need to look at, hey, again, what type of investor are you? Do you want to buy the Teslas and the Amazons and the General Motors and the whomever else, right, of the worlds, right? Or are you a penny stock investor? Or are you, I want to invest overseas? But I would tell you that the bulk of your investments, in my opinion, again, not a trained stockbroker, this is for entertainment purposes only, is that most likely it's 401k, mutual fund, or ETFs, and then a smaller part of your overall portfolio is individual stocks, okay? And all of this wrapped up is relative to your overall lifestyle. Are you paying? Do you have any debt? Have you paid all down all your debt? Yep, you shouldn't have any debt, things like that before you start investing, okay? So that's really it. I think that stocks are after ETFs, or if you have a bunch of money to invest, maybe you're doing it subsequently, things like that, okay? We've talked about are ETFs good for the long term, but I want to touch on this. ETFs are great investments for the long term. And again, in explaining ETFs, that's fundamentally what I want you to take away from this, is that ETFs are great investments for the long term, and I definitely think you need to look at them as a component of your overall portfolio for diversification. And the cool thing about ETFs, guys, is that you can buy an ETF to fit your personality or your personality in different times of the year. I mean, it's crazy the amount of different ETFs that are out there and the different types and things like that. Do your due diligence, look around them. Consider subscribing to the channel, because I talk about ETFs, going to be talking about ETFs all the time. I love ETFs, and to me, they're one of the best ways to get started investing in the money, especially if you're a brand new investor, okay? By the way, speaking of, if you're a brand new investor, if you're a stock market beginner, I'm linking right now, there's a little link to a video that's come up on the screen, and I want you to take a look at that. That's a video that I made yesterday, Stock Market for Beginners, Investing, where I talk about kind of the 6 easy steps, stock market for beginners. Go check out that video. Until tomorrow, until the next video, God bless you, take care, and consider subscribing to the channel. Drop a like on this video, it really helps my channel out, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.